A while ago I did a video broadly covering all the Grand Admirals of Palpatine's empire, and since then a couple have gotten their own videos going into more depth on their own stories. Today we're going to be doing that for another Grand Admiral, Osvald Teshik. The Teshik family had lived on the core world of Anaxis for generations, though Osvald spent much of his childhood on the mining colony of Callistus as well. Anaxis was an important planet in the Azure sector, which you may recognize as sharing a name with the Azure Hammer Command, a sector army chiefly responsible for the defense of the core, under both the Empire and the Republic. We don't know much about his earlier career, but he was one of the original Grand Admirals elevated to the rank by Palpatine at the New Year's Fete celebration 2 years before the Battle of Yavin. Unlike some of his colleagues, promoted for more political reasons, Teshik's military skill was never in question. He's described originally as having been quite compassionate and a skilled leader, with Abel G. Pena saying he was intended to have been somewhat opposed to the way the Empire operated, but was still trying to work within that system. Teshik would come to know firsthand the evils of the Empire and the cruelty of the Emperor himself. Teshik's main bit of backstory, like so many things, comes from the West End game Star Wars role-playing game, specifically the Far Orbit project. Star Wars Insider claims he was directly introduced in the game, but while his backstory comes from the source, or at least information related to it does, the only direct mention of a Grand Admiral that I was able to find seems to be an unnamed one and not directly related to that backstory. I could be wrong about this. I read through it twice to try to find it, but I wasn't able to find anything more than that one general mention, which we'll get to in a second. Teshik, now in command of the core defenses, was held responsible for the capture of an Imperial advisor named Koveshiv by privateers and rebels in the core. This capture was essentially the main plot of the Far Orbit Project questline. Palpatine then threatened the Grand Admiral with execution if the advisor was not recovered. While the later articles tied Teshik into these events, the only direct mention of the Grand Admiral in the book, as I mentioned, is about Veshiv finding information on another Grand Admiral diverting funds towards starfighter research. The assumption now being that Teshik was the one doing so, but I haven't seen other mentions of Teshik being connected to military research, and that bit is never explicitly cleared up. With Teshik's failure to recover Veshiv, Palpatine sent the Grand Admiral in command of a small force of gunships of unidentified class, led from a Pursuit-class light cruiser, with only 2 squadrons of TIE fighters against the isolationist Hapes Consortium in the Battle of Endalia, expecting the Grand Admiral to meet his end. The gunship classes are unidentified, so don't take the video you're seeing as a complete representation of what happened, just something cool to look at. Teshik survived the encounter, but because of the severe injuries he sustained in what was supposed to be his suicide attack against the Hapans, he required significant mechanical reconstruction. Almost as impactful as the injuries themselves was the discrimination he received from others within Imperial High Society, resulting from his mechanical parts, causing severe dissociation in his personality from all emotion. When asked why the Emperor had done this to him, he said being Emperor is its own why. The next knowledge we have of Teshik's life comes 4 years later at the Battle of Endor. He was one of several Grand Admirals aboard the Death Star, and as it was destroyed, he was trapped under a falling beam. Most crew, as they tried to escape, avoided him, but one crew member did finally help Teshik get up. From there, he returned to his flagship, the Eleemosynary, and continued to battle for hours before being captured by the rebels. His character, as intended by Dan Wallace and Abel G. Pena, is hinted at by the name of his flagship, Eleemosynary meaning charity given to the poor. Teshik was described by Pena as having essentially been an unlucky figurehead targeted by the rebels as a stand-in for the now dead Vader and Palpatine. They needed a symbolic person to hold accountable after Endor, and Teshik fit the bill. Before his execution, Teshik related visions he had had of the galaxy and its history, the countless and endless wars he had seen from the Tianese and before, up to the present and even beyond. He said with his near death at Endalia, he had already seen the inevitable end of the Death Star at Endor, but he had also seen things like the ruined cityscape of Coruscant covered in green spires, referring to the Yuuzhan Vong's attempts to Vong form the planet 20 years later, as well as the burning of Kashyyyk in Darth Caedus' Second Galactic Civil War. His prophecies fell on deaf ears, and the Grand Admiral was executed by the new galactic government. That's all for today. Our next video will be about something related to another Grand Admiral. I hope you've enjoyed this video. It's not a subject with a ton of visual media, so I hope the Empire at War clips were suitable enough. If you have any suggestions for future videos though, please leave them in the comments, and consider leaving a like or subscribing for more. Thanks for watching, and I hope to see you next time.